MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you're watching me on YouTube, there you go. You can call me Sully. This show is being dropped on Saturday, the 9th day of October 2021. Yep, I'm doing a Saturday show. I missed a day at one point this week, and you know what? I'm just going to be trying to throw as many of these during the playoffs as I possibly can, because do you know what? I want this to be your first listen. I want this to be your first listen, and thanks for making us your first listen. We're available on all the platforms. You want to get yourself a podcast. You want to get yourself a podcast on your Apple. You want to get your Apple, I said Apple podcast already. I doubled down on that, but whatever it's Android, you go to YouTube, Player FM. I don't know. I'm not telling you how to listen to a podcast. I'm just glad you're listening to me. And how do you know that I know that you're listening? Because how could you hear what I'm saying right now if you weren't? So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Braves versus the Brewers. This is a Braves-Brewers podcast. We'll cover the Giants and the Dodgers, who are playing later this afternoon. But you know what? I'm not going to show any bias here. In fact, the concept of bias and the concept of a playoff where you don't really have a dog in the fight is kind of the point of the first part of this podcast. I'm going to set up a reaction to a listener of mine. I want to sort of clarify something in case there's any confusion, because clearly, based on this listener, there was a little bit of confusion. This person claimed he's unsubscribed. There is no doubt in my mind that they're currently listening to my voice. Also, you are going to be talking about the game, which is currently going on as I record this. And we're going to talk a little bit about the game. And then once the game is over, I don't know how it ends. If I did know how it ended, I would go to BetOnline right now and put it all on there. And then, boom, buy that a mansion on Russian Hill in San Francisco that I've been eyeing. But no, I don't know. So we're going to talk a little bit about the game. And then for the third segment, I want to talk a little bit about the state of this series. The Milwaukee Brewers versus the Atlanta Braves. An interesting matchup of two franchises, as one of them gets to go to the National League Championship Series without having to face either Los Angeles or San Francisco, based upon how the playoff situation is now. They should be dropping to their knees and thanking the stars above that when inevitably the tweak happens to the playoff system as it exists now, one of them, or they would, San Francisco would be playing one, Los Angeles would be playing the other. And neither one of them have to play. They have to play each other. Now, Atlanta's a fine team who really pulled it together after the trade deadline. Milwaukee is a wonderful team. I actually picked them to win the World Series at the beginning of the postseason because I like how they're built. And I like how their pitching is built. And I think that in a short series, when you can match another team's pitching, I think Milwaukee is not as good as the Los Angeles Dodgers or the San Francisco Giants over 162 games. But I think in a 7-game series, they can match them game for game. To bring up Braves teams of the past, this is how you had year in and year out, the Atlanta Braves won between 95 and 100 games with a Hall of Famer in their number 3 slot in their rotation. They would have Glavine, Maddox, and Smoltz year in and year out. Their number 4 star would be someone like a Denny Nagel or a Kevin Millwood, or someone who would be another team's ace. And he was their number 4 starter / long reliever. And yet, why did the Braves only win one World Series during that run? Only one. So many franchises would love to only win one World Series during a run. The reason is that in a short series, over 162 games, they're going to win 2 out of 3 constantly. But in a short series, if you went up against a Kevin Brown or a Livan Hernandez with a little help from Eric Gregg's strike zone, or Kevin Brown again with San Diego when he went from Florida to San Diego, or you had a Kurt Schilling matching them in the series with Philadelphia, and then inevitably there was a issue with the bullpen because the Braves bullpen was always their bugaboo, not the Bugaloos, but the bugaboo. That's how you could beat them. Not over 162 games, but in short series. I think Milwaukee could match up. Their pitching staff can match up with anybody's. I think their offense is good enough, and I think their defense is good enough. And I think you can make for a very entertaining series. And why I think they're going to win. I think it's going to help them also. They don't have to face one of them. They only have to beat one of them. Imagine if it was set up that the Brewers had to beat both the Dodgers and the Giants to get to the World Series. That'd be quite a gauntlet. They had to beat the Braves. Not the Braves are a bad team. They're not the Dodgers or the Giants this year. There's an inequity in the playoff system, which is going in the favor of the Milwaukee Brewers. One of the reasons why I'm picking them. By the way, totally off a different tangent, but I guess it's not because we're talking about the Braves. I've often wondered what would have happened because I mentioned the fact that when you look at the number 4 starter for all those years during the Bobby Cox Braves years, where you would have had a Nagel or a Charlie Liebrandt or a Kevin Millwood or someone who was an excellent pitcher in that number 4 spot in their rotation. I often wondered if the Braves could have won more World Series titles if they switched Smoltz to the closer role for the postseason. He did come in and close a couple of times in 1999, and when Smoltz became the closer full-time, he was the best closer they had. And he also was their best big game pitcher, to be fair, and he's in a very select group of people who have clinched a postseason series both with a complete game and out of the bullpen. Adam Wainwright, by the way, is another one of them who was a Braves farmhand, if keeping things together here. I often wonder if they would have been better off saying, we're going to have Denny Nagel or Charlie Liebrandt or Kevin Millwood starting game 3 and bringing Smoltz out of the bullpen instead of the parade of closers that they had, whether it was Juan Berenguer, Alejandro Pena. They had Jeff Reardon for about an hour and a half. They had Kerry Lightenberg for 1 minute and 3/4, Greg McMichael, Mark Wohlers. Wohlers was the only one who managed to close out a World Series, but the next year he wet the bed against Jim Leyritz. There's so many instances where there was the image of their closer coughing it up in a gigantic playoff game, and Smoltz was their best closer. It's a philosophical question. But there's another philosophical question I'm going to address right now, because the other day I did a video, and look at, please comment here on YouTube or comment on Twitter, either at Sully Baseball or at Locked On MLB Pods or wherever. I'll see the comments somewhere. And if you have issues with something I've said, you don't like something I say, tell me, please. And if you want to insult me, that's fine. I can take it. I was a comedian. I teach special needs kids. That's what I do for a living now. You think what you're saying or doing is tough? I deal with kids all day. Okay, bring it on. Bring, as they say, it on. But also, if I'm doing something wrong, I want to know. Or if you think I'm doing something wrong, and I don't think I am, I'll address that. I don't hide. I don't do anything like that. I don't block people or anything like that. Life's too short to do that, and who knows? We may all learn to, grow a little bit. But I got a very, very, how should I say it? Lovingly worded response on the YouTube page, which said from Two Trio, whose avatar is looks like a Rockets jersey there. So it's, regarding to podcast I did on the 4 playoff game day, said I'm going to say I'll cover up biased asked against Brewers right off the top at minute 35. SMH, that means shake my head, Mom, in case you're listening. F off, he didn't say F, he spelled off, unsubscribed. I love it when people have to announce that they're unsubscribing. I like to think that they actually drop a gauntlet when they do that. Okay, I have angered Houston Twitter this year, and one of the main reasons is I think they have a little bit of a martyr complex. I do. I've called them out on it a couple of times. Astros Twitter does not like me. And there have been times where I probably have said something that is, may not have been 100% pro Astros. This was not the case. What I was saying at that point, and thank you for time stamping it. What I was saying at that point is that, and I even said in the episode, if you are not an Astros fan, or you don't have a relative on the team, in other words, if you don't really have a dog in the fight, You should root for the White Sox to win game 3. Why? Because I hate Houston? Because trash cans cheat? No. As I said in the episode, I like days where there are 4 playoff games. And if the Astros eliminate the White Sox on Sunday, then there will only be 3 playoff games because the Red Sox won. So there's going to be a game 4 of the Tampa Bay versus Boston series. Okay. And so if the Astros lose one game or the White Sox win said game, and that one of those two things, those are the same thing, then we'll have a day with 4 playoff games again. That's what I was saying. There's a certain way of looking at the sport when you don't have a dog in the fight. Now, I don't claim to be an Astros fan. But that being said, I'm also not a Tony La Russa fan. And I am a Dusty Baker fan. And I love Zach Greinke. So I'm not one of these people who think the Astros winning would be the end of the world. But I do want to see that series go deep. Because I'm neither a White Sox fan or an Astro fan, I want to see a do-or-die game 5. I don't want to see a sweep. That's all I'm saying. If you're an Astros fan, and I have a guess you might be, of course you're rooting for a sweep. That's your job as a fan. I remember when the Red Sox, grew up in New England, grew up huge Red Sox fan. When they were up 3-0 in the 2004 World Series, I had more than one person ask me, wouldn't you like to see them clinch in Fenway? And I said, no, I don't want them to lose anything. I just seen the Yankees blow a 3-0 lead. So forgive me if I was a little bit shaken about the concept of thinking you're playing with house money with a 3-0 lead. But the fact of the matter is, I want to see my team win every game, and they happen to do that in that World Series. You should root for your team. If you're an Astros fan, you should root to sweep the White Sox, sweep the winner of the Rays-Red Sox series, and sweep the World Series. But if you don't have a dog in the fight, like I don't have with the Braves and the Brewers, then guess what? You should root for a longer series because I'm gonna blow your mind here. I want the Braves to win game 2. Not because I'm a Braves fan, not because I'm from Atlanta. Of the two teams, I think I would lean towards Milwaukee, if for no other reason than to hear Bob Uecker more announced longer into the postseason. Also, if the Brewers go on to win, I look smarter because I picked them to win the World Series. But I'd like the Braves to win today. Is it because I'm anti-Milwaukee? Is it because I don't like the Fonz? Is it because I dislike the state of Wisconsin? No. I don't have a dog in the fight. Ergo, I wanted to go get to game 5. I want the Astros and the White Sox to go to game 5 and have game 5 be 15 innings long. Same with Milwaukee and Atlanta. That's fandom when you don't have a dog in the fight. It has nothing to do with bias. Don't play the martyr card on this. I'm not anti-Houston. I'm actually not anti-Houston. I'm anti-fake martyrdom. Okay? So just think about that. I know you're an Astros fan, and so therefore you want them to win. I know if I was watching the Red Sox in the playoffs and others, and people are saying, "Oh, I hope the Red Sox get swept." Okay, but I don't. But I understand what someone did. And if someone didn't have a dog in the fight, I know there's a lot of Yankee fans who don't like the Rays and don't like the Red Sox. Stacey Gotsulias of Locked On Yankees is rooting for a meteor to hit Earth. Her 3 least favorite teams are still in the playoffs, the Red Sox, Rays, and the Astros. I know she's rooting for the White Sox. But the fact of the matter is, you need to understand, I totally expect you to want the Astros to win. But lay off the martyrdom a little bit. Pull that back. Understand that part of the reason for some of this is just basic fandom when you're from the outside looking in. Think about you're obviously the person who's a basketball fan and a Rockets fan. Well, let's say there's 2 teams you don't care about in the playoffs. I don't follow basketball as much as I used to. I believe Brooklyn played Milwaukee at one point. Could be wrong about that. I don't know. Um, if you don't care about Brooklyn, you don't care about Milwaukee. Don't you want that series to go 7 games? When you're indifferent about the teams, do you think to yourself, God, I hope this is a sweep and not competitive? No, it's sometimes fun. I'll say the Braves were involved in my favorite World Series I've ever watched in my life, which was the 1991 World Series. I was a sophomore in college. I was so engrossed in every pitch of that game. At that point in my life, I had never stepped foot in the state of Georgia nor Minnesota. I still haven't stepped foot in Minnesota. I've been to Georgia a couple of times. Great state. I actually went to a Braves game at Turner Field. That's neither here nor there. I was drawn into every single pitch. And part of the reason was I didn't care about either team. And so therefore, however it unfolded was a thing of joy. Now, if the Twins wound up sweeping the Braves, and remember, the Twins won the first 2 games of that series. This is actually a perfect example. I didn't have a dog in the fight. I happened to be a Jack Morris fan at the time, and I happened to be a Kirby Puckett fan at the time. And there was something about the tomahawk and stuff that rubbed me the wrong way. And I also was a huge Barry Bonds fan at the time. And he was with Pittsburgh, and the Braves just beat him, so I was a little mad at them. So the first 2 games, you bet your tuchus, I was rooting for Minnesota to win. But when they were up 2 games to none, and they had a lead in Game 3, if I remember that correctly, I know Chili Davis hit a home run to tie Game 3, which went into extra innings. I'm doing some of this from memory. I remember thinking, I want the Twins to win, but I want the Braves to win this game. Does that mean I'm anti-Minnesota or anti-Atlanta? No, I'm pro Game 7. And I couldn't have made it any clearer that I was pro 4 games in one day. That's all. That's what fandom's about. We all should know that. Long first segment. What are you going to do about that? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch the Atlanta Braves play the Milwaukee Brewers, the 2 franchises that Henry Aaron played for, and I'm going to see who wins. I hope it's Atlanta. Don't take offense, Milwaukee. All right, the Braves and Brewers game is over. And for those of us who don't have the proverbial dog in the fight, we got what we wanted. It was actually a pretty exciting game. It wasn't a nail biter because there was this sense that the Braves pitching just wasn't going to let up. But of course, Fried was amazing through 6, and they yanked him. And along the way, there was a trio of relievers that the Braves employed, and the Brewers kept being on the verge of a big inning. And they put 2 runners on base in the 7th, 2 runners on base in the 8th, 2 runners on base in the 9th, and they couldn't push a single run across. And Tyler Matzik did not get the win, did not get the save, but he probably was the pitching star in some ways. Fried was amazing, but Matzik worked out of 2 jams. He inherited Jackson's jam in the 7th, and he worked out of his own jam in the 8th. And, that was pretty impressive. I just want to give a special note because he's not going to have any of the sexy stats that goes along with a couple of Houdini acts that he pulled off. But Albies drove in a run, Freeman drove in a run, and Riley hit a home run for Atlanta. And there we go, 3-0, 3 bagel. And I'm telling you something, it's an interesting thing when you take a look at the way that this series has unfolded so far. I mean, there's not a lot to analyze. Fried was great. The Brewers couldn't get a big hit. And so now we have 2 straight games where, for the most part, Milwaukee could not drive in a big run. I mean, I brought in Los Angeles, talk about how they scored their 3 runs in the wild card game with a pair of home runs, and including the 2-run walk-off shot. Then they didn't score anything in game 2. The Brewers are also 1-1 this postseason. They got a 2-run homer from Tellez in their 2-1 victory in game 1, and they got nothing today. So this is an example of teams that need the home run to score. If you keep that ball in the ballpark, so far the Dodgers and the Brewers have combined to manufacture 0 runs. Now, the same can be said for the Giants. The Giants got all their runs. And actually, the same can kind of be said for St. Louis, who didn't drive in a run. They got a run on a wild pitch. So the RBI hits by Albies and Freeman are the only non-home run producing runs from a National League team this postseason, save for the wild pitch thrown by Max Scherzer in Game 1, in the wild card game between LA and St. Louis. It's weird when you're seeing teams rely so heavily on the home run. It's kind of odd. I know home runs are sexy, and like the Yankees have built their entire team around home runs or busts. It's odd that you're not seeing much in terms of the manufacturing of runs, especially when you have teams with such solid pitching staffs. I mean, look at the pitching performance we've got so far. So far, the worst one from a National League pitcher has been Scherzer. And that's basically because Roberts had a quick hook on him. Wainwright pitched really well into the 6th. Webb and Buehler pitched well. Morton pitched well. Burns pitched well. And today you had Max Fried, who was terrific. Woodruff was great. All the pitching has been great. So you would think, I know this flies in the face of analytics and sabermetrics, you would think that in the postseason, there would be more of a premium on trying to manufacture runs instead of waiting for the home run. One of the things, look at this, I'm not old man Sully. I understand analytics are important, and of course we have to be careful. There is no universal analytics. There's no back of the teacher's handbook with all the answers. Analytics means people analyze data and come up with conclusions based upon their analysis. And so, for whatever reason, there is a great premium over 162 games to put the emphasis on, banging home runs and not stealing bases and not manufacturing runs, because over 162 games, that will produce more victories. And certainly the National League teams that are survived right now, and also in the American League, certainly the Red Sox, certainly the Rays, these are teams that are heavy. Did I mention heavy in the analytics? So they work certainly over 162 games. But there's a danger of trying to sit back and trying to pound one out of the park when you know that every single pitcher you're going to face is going to be pretty good. When you get to the division series and eventually the league championship series, you're only facing the best teams. The chances are the best teams got there in part because they can hit home runs, sure. They can produce runs, sure. But they also have great pitching. Burns is a Cy Young candidate. Scherzer's a Cy Young candidate. The Giants pitching staff is deep top to bottom. Fried and Morton are tremendous pitchers. At least in the National League, you're going to see a whole bunch of aces. In the American League, you're going to see, the Rays have a parade of pitchers. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think the Rays, even though they've tied the Red Sox, are still going to win the pennant because they have a deeper pitching staff. They may not have the workhorses that some of the other National League teams have, but they have more pitchers. They have quantity. That being said, in the National League, you have pitchers who are closer to being old traditional workhorses and with some deep bullpens, to be sure. So you would think runs are at a premium. Certainly are in this Brewers Braves series. Braves scored 3 runs. They got a Peterson home run in Game 1. They got the Albies and Freeman hit, and then the Riley home run. Meanwhile, the Brewers have the Tellez home run, and that's it. When you look around and say, we're going to wait for a big home run, I don't know. Maybe when you constantly are getting 2 runners on base, they constantly get, as I said, 7th, 8th, and 9th, 2 runners are on base each other. 9th inning, first and second, nobody out. Same thing for the 8th. It was first and second, either nobody out or 1 out. And there's no moving runners along. There's no manufacturing of runs. Sully, that's not good for the analytics. Analytics are for the 162-game season to get you into the dance. Now you have to squeeze as many runs out as possible. Because you're not going to face the Pirates' number 4 starter. You're not going to face the Rangers pitching staff. You're only facing the best pitchers. So maybe that sort of poo-pooing or the total dismissal of manufactured runs has to be, I don't know, you cock your head sideways, not because in my day, no, in this day. You're facing Woodruff, you're facing Burns, you're facing Morton, you're facing Riley, you're facing Webb, you're going to face Disclafani or Gosman, you're going to face Scherzer, you're going to face Urias, you're going to face Buehler, and all of them are going to give you about 6 shutout innings, and then you go into their deep bullpen. You got to scratch a run out here or there. This is a much different game if it's 3-1 or 3-2 going to the ninth as opposed to 3-0. You don't play in the postseason the way you do in the regular season. You don't believe me? Would you bring Madison Bumgarner in to pitch 5 innings out of the bullpen on 2 days rest in the regular season? Of course not. You get fired. You may be beheaded. But you manage the postseason differently because it is a different animal. And maybe some of these teams attack differently in the postseason because squeezing a run out here or there could have made the difference for Milwaukee. They'd have a 2-0 lead, or maybe it would have been the difference for Atlanta. They may be up 2-0. Either way, it's an interesting series. And I wanted to cover this series because I'm here in the Los Angeles area, and everything is about the Dodgers right now. And a lot of my family is up in the Bay Area. I've been talking a lot about my dad and the Giants. And I didn't want to neglect this series. Milwaukee, Atlanta could very easily have been swept under the rug, and it deserves our attention. It's 1-1. It's going to go at least 4. Would not stun me if this would go 5. Would like to see it go 5. So whatever team wins game 3, I'm rooting for the other one in game 4, not because of bias. So let's take a quick peek at what we have going on. The Braves and the Brewers are not going to be playing on Sunday. They play on Monday, which if there are 4 games, then it is going to be the first game, the game 1, which would be 10 a.m. West Coast time, 1 p.m. on the East Coast. Looks like Anderson is going to be the starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves. Ian Anderson, good solid pitcher. I don't know who's going to be the pitcher for Milwaukee. Might be Peralta. I don't know the answer. They got good pitching. And there may be a combination. They go Peralta and, I don't know what they're going to do. They haven't asked me. They've not consulted with me. But it does mean that there is a certain, neither team is going to be throwing their ace or their number 2. So there's a little bit of even match here. Who's going to play the bullpen the best? And as I mentioned in the previous segment, maybe who's going to squeeze the greatest number of runs out when things are up against it. This is the type of baseball I'm talking about. Not because I'm like, in my day. This is not an in my day situation. Squeezing runs out, manufacturing runs might be the difference between winning or losing at this point. And this is all binary. Nobody cares if it's a close game or a blowout. It's binary. You win, you lose. And for the Atlanta Braves, a team that sold, that should have sold, at the trade deadline, but bought. Everyone thought they were going to, cut bait. I said this before. I was totally wrong about the Atlanta Braves. When they lost Ronald Acuna Jr., their MVP candidate, and a bunch of other injuries were happening and other off-the-field stuff was happening, which I'm not going to get into in this episode. But I said, hey, do you know what? I'm not saying tear the team down, but I think I said this at the trade deadline. They should just take whatever players they're thinking about non-tendering or don't want to have back and see what you could get for them. Instead of non-tendering them at the end of the year, you may get a minor leaguer. You'll pad your farm system with a couple of new players, and you'll roll the dice for next year. Say, hey, it just wasn't our year. Well, now here they are. They've made it through the Burns-Woodruff gauntlet and are now even. All they have to do are win their home games, and off they go to the National League Championship Series. in what looked like was going to be a lost year. That makes game 3 really, really interesting. Really interesting. Because the Brewers were my pick to win the World Series. I thought their depth was completely their biggest weapon. And their bats have gone dead at the complete wrong time. When the bats are dead, maybe then you got to say, let's try something new. Either way, I'm rooting for a 5-game series. I hope the good fans of Atlanta and Milwaukee are fine with that because I think we're going to have some fun. And I'm going to drop this episode just as the Giants-Dodgers game is starting because, well, I've had more than one person say that I haven't given this series the attention it deserves, and it deserves some attention. It could be a very predictable series that we're seeing unfold. So go to the free and easy to use Odyssey app. And by the way, thanks for making us your first listen. We're available on all the free apps to have for your podcasting and here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On MLB Pods. Same handle for Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. As you can see here from my lower third on YouTube, I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about biases and breaking down the Braves-Brewers game on Saturday. This has been Locked On MLB for, what the heck day is it? The 9th day of October. We're nearly in mid-October, 2021. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.